Welcome to Season 4, Episode 5 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. This is our 2022 F1 season predictions and Drive to Survive reaction episode. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-hosts, Andy and Deanna. Good evening, you two. Andy, I just had it pulled up. Now my stupid phone turned off, but we are currently 4 days, 9 hours, 28 minutes, and 35 seconds from FP1 of the new season. How excited are you?
It's go time, baby. Let's do it.
That's right. Deanna, are you feeling the same amount of enthusiasm as Andy?
Yes, absolutely. Especially after suffering through Drive to Survive this weekend. I'm so ready to put the 2021 season in the rearview mirror. I'm so excited and happy for new cars, new season, fresh, clean slate for everybody.
New stuff to talk about.
Yes, I'm excited, thrilled. It's been a long couple months without F1. I'm over the moon.
I love the DTS passion. We'll get into that here in a minute. But spoiler alert for everybody out there listening. We are widely known across F1 Nation that our predictions are concrete and about as reliable as you can get. So by the end of this episode, you're already going to know what's going to happen this year. So if you want to watch the season, that's up to you. But at least you'll listen to us first. But before we get into all of that, I have to remind everybody you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. You can check out our link tree on our Twitter profile page, of course. If you are watching this on YouTube, which is still pretty new for us, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, anything with a rating system, 5-star review really goes a long way, so we do appreciate each one of those. You can also email the show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can visit our website at www.outlapf1.com that I'm about to get the keys to, so if the website starts to crash, it's my fault, but I'm going to try my best. You can also check out our F1 for Beginners episode. Our 2022 version is now out and ready to be consumed by you fine people. That is Season 4, Episode 4, or you can check it out on YouTube. I think we broke it down into, was it 3 or 4 videos, Andy?
It was 3 different videos. It came out over the course of the weekend, so they're up there. They're meant to be kind of a resource. So if you're wondering what we're talking about or you're not sure what we're talking about, we tried to break it up so that we could make it easier for you guys to find stuff, to get read up on the lovely sport of Formula One. So go check that out.
Thank you, Andy. And then Deanna, we have your Project Relapped, and your current episode is what?
The 2022 livery rankings. Which I do have some opinions about them. There are 3 that stand far above the rest.
You have been known for your opinions. Lately, I have been liking your opinions more than I have before. So as long as they're Ferrari themed, but we'll get into that, I think, in a little bit as well. Andy, tell the people, Outlap F1 Nation continues to step up. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, no, we continue to love all of our Outlap F1 Nation members. Those people currently are Jonathan Scott, Cody Walsh, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzak, Richard Cole, Travis Colby, Timothy Brown, Hillary LaRose, Mary Brown, and, of course, Matt Polanski from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast. If you'd like to become a member of the Outlap F1 Nation, and we are in the course of trying to boost some stuff up for our monthly contributors as a special thank you for their donations, please feel free to check out our support page. We put it on every episode in all the podcast links. So if you'd like to do that, please continue to support us. We're super thrilled for that. So yeah, we love you and we thank you.
And you can also check out Manscaped to help out the show by using code OUTLAP. That's OUTLAP, all one word, to get 20% off and free shipping. Also coming down the pike here, Andy, we've got the Outlap F1 Fantasy League. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, we just set it up. So feel free to, I think we'll probably put a link out. I know we put it kind of on Discord and a few other places, but we do have a brewing fantasy league. I think we all find out who picked whom later this week or once it finally goes final. But it's interesting. I've got a team. I know John's got a team. I think maybe Deanna's going to have a team.
I'll try to figure it out.
So, I'm just going to back into Andy's team.
What I would say is I'm relatively confident in my picks. But it's early. It's super early days. But we'll find out how confident I am in our real predictions in a couple minutes. But in terms of my fantasy league, it's a lot of value picks, which is I think the way to do a good fantasy team.
We will see. All right, so you mentioned some of our predictions, and we'll get into that in a minute. But before we get into that, I kind of want to break down Drive to Survive a little bit. We won't go too deep into it, just kind of some overarching thoughts. I think all of us have actually made it all the way through all 10 episodes, right around 10 hours of shows there. So I'll throw it to you first, Deanna. I know you've got some thoughts. I think you may have just finished just in time to record tonight. So hard-hitting thoughts. What do you got?
Yeah, I finished about an hour ago. It did take me the course of 2 days to finally get through it. I watched an episode and I had to take a break and get through it. But I feel like it's just the same formula over and over again. Again, I think it works if you don't know much about F1. If this is your introduction, it's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen. If you do, it does get somewhat frustrating to watch, especially things aren't in chronological order. They missed a lot of the best moments in the season. They didn't do an offensive job by any means covering it, but I just think a lot of stuff was missed, and it's just a little all over the place if you know what happened and how it happened. And I'm just at the point where I'm good. Unless the formula changes, I don't need to see anymore. We're good.
Yeah, that's a fair kind of summarization of the show, I think. But Andy, do you have any kind of specific moments that you liked, maybe didn't like? A little more detail.
I did like the fact that we got to see exactly who the Mazappans really are, and shocking. I don't think anybody was surprised by any of that. I have a lot more respect for what Gunther Steiner was actually going through last year. I mean, he wasn't necessarily on camera. He didn't have a real reason to be there, but you do kind of feel for him, especially with this type of look into it. Other good things. I did find some of the behind, especially in the last couple episodes, which of course are all about the last couple races of the season. I did find it interesting to see some different viewpoints of, Toto Wolff kind of losing his mind there at the end. We all saw him very many times. So those were kind of good and interesting. There were things that were just maddeningly frustrating. I mean, chronological order just does not apply in this universe. So the more you try to put things together, I'm like, well, wait, did that really happen? No, it probably didn't, but just go with it and you'll be fine. There were 3 times I can remember where I literally stopped and looked and said in a really high-pitched voice, really? Because I didn't understand, wow, that's not how I remember it being talked about or anything like that. Yeah. So they do kind of take some liberties with it, but it is all in the sense of building drama. It looks beautiful in high definition 4K. So if you have the updated Netflix package, it is awesome. In fact, when you start watching something that's not that, when you go back to just regular high def, it's like, wow, that's really a step down. You really do see the difference. So that's kind of interesting. But I mean, I enjoy it for what it is, and I know what it is, and I know what it's not. But if you're looking to get a first crack at some inside information, it's a great way to get into the sport.
Yeah, and it's done amazing things for the sport. It will continue to. Again, I think this is a fantastic series for someone that doesn't know anything. We on this podcast are not the audience for this show.
Yeah, but like Andy said, I go into it knowing what I'm going to get, what I'm going to consume, so that still makes it enjoyable in moments for me. I still get frustrated about things, but I kind of just let that roll off my back because I know what they're targeted towards, and I know that's not necessarily me. But you mentioned respect for Gunther Steiner. Couldn't agree more, and not just for what he had to deal with as the team boss, but climbing that freaking mountain. That was pretty badass, and I wasn't expecting that out of Gunther Steiner.
Kudos to the camera people who got up there to film that.
Yes. Yeah, it's any kind of documentary, anything about that sort of thing. It's always man, this mountain climber is really cool, but that cameraman might even be more badass. He's doing all that with camera gear on top of it. But then besides that, I mean, chronological issues, even within just a race or qualifying itself, I feel like a lot of times when they talk about qualifying, it almost made it seem okay, Max goes out and qualifies, and then Lewis goes out and qualifies. No. It's that's not really how it works.
And nobody's on the team radio in the middle of the lap.
No.
Yeah.
It was I don't know. I think it was Qatar. They were saying oh, you finished P8, you finished P5, but then they were now Max and Lewis are going. It's they wouldn't. No, they weren't. They
got all
weren't
the out of here. The top dogs. Yeah. And then Andy, something I wanted to ask you. So in a lot of the earlier episodes, I feel like I kind of watched them in a convoluted way, but it almost felt like it was trying its hardest to make there be tension between Lando and Ricardo, especially early on when Danny Ricciardo was really struggling. So, like, how much do you think that was just like, Netflix really trying to pump in some controversy where there wasn't any, or do you think there was like maybe a hint of truth to that early on for the McLaren pairing?
Look, I think Lando was obviously disappointed not to have his buddy Carlos in the paddock with him all the time anymore. I think that's natural, and therefore you're probably not as, good with the guy who's coming in to replace a good friend of yours. I mean, just even in a professional sense, if you've got somebody who you worked with for, a few years and then they're gone and then somebody else comes in to replace them, you're probably not going to look as favorably onto that replacement, regardless of who he is or what his personality is. I do think some of it got handed up a bit to try to make that. They're apparently Planet F1 and Netflix are best buddies because they kept referencing them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really kind of small story that they really played up in Monaco. And I think it worked into their favor that Lando did so well and Danny did so poorly that weekend. So I get why they just kind of globbed onto that and ran with it as much as they did. And you're also trying to sell the Ricardo redemption story, which they did in the 5th episode in droves.
Yeah. And I think, in their slight favor, I think the Lando-Daniel rivalry is much more convincing than the Lando-Carlos one that they tried to pass off a couple seasons ago. But, I mean, there was kind of tensions at the beginning, especially because it was like a lot of people, myself included, thought Danny Rick was going to come in and lead that team off the bat. So it was definitely kind of a prove yourself year for Norris, which I don't know. They also didn't it was giving Danny the redemption arc, but they also didn't emphasize how well Lando did at the beginning of that season. And he was still ahead of I don't remember if it was Bottas or Perez.
He was in third for a while.
He was in third
into the 13th race, he was in third or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like he deserved a little bit more than that as well. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. They definitely downplayed that part. It's just one of the lines kind of struck me. I think it was from Lando kind of saying, when it was announced that Danny Ricciardo was coming into the team, everybody just assumed they were going to get along great and things were going to be awesome and fun and chill. That's not always the case. And I know we kind of got caught up in that too at the time, but it kind of makes sense that just because two guys are fun and chill or I like to have a good time doesn't mean they're going to have a good time together, especially right off the bat. So definitely some interesting points behind that. But then I think biggest omission, and I know you guys, we kind of talked about this pre-show, but Fernando Alonso, how did we not see him defending Lewis Hamilton? That was Ocon's win there.
But it was because of what Fernando did.
Yeah. So that was pretty disappointing just not to see that because it's like you were saying, Andy, with the 4K and it's got the Dolby Atmos, so it sounds amazing. Some of that.
I would have wanted, showcase that because that's what you want wheel-to-wheel racing to look like. That's what you want. You want that as the bell cow of your sport, and that's two great drivers at the top still of their game going at it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So do you guys have a favorite episode? Can you name your favorite episode off the top of your head, Deanna?
No. No. They all blend together. I just watched them all back to back. I don't think I can distinguish which one's which. That's where we're at the moment.
I've got one in mind. Andy, do you got one?
I'm kind of in a tie between. I mean, obviously, if you look at the hat on my head, you'll think I love episode 5. I did, but I actually thought the first episode was probably the best of the lot because it did do, I think, the best to set the stage, and that's kind of how we all felt after that first race. Was whoa, this is not quite like all the other years. We think this is a real fight, but we don't know yet for sure. But boy, does it sound interesting. So I think from that, I left that episode with the same feeling I actually left the first race with.
I'm going to bandwagon onto Andy's. I agree fully.
There you go. So for me, I really enjoyed episode 10 just because when I was showing a lot of the scenes from the last race, I was getting that same kind of anxiety and tenseness about me, even though I knew what was going to happen. It was just kind of fun to rewatch all the nonsense and drama all over again. But I think actually episode 5, even though, I like McLaren, I'm just more of a Ferrari guy, so it's probably easier to say this since I know what happens at the end of the season, even though maybe Netflix didn't tell us that Ferrari finished ahead of McLaren, but they did. But yeah, that 1-2 for McLaren at Monza, that one, that was just the feel-good story of the Drive to Survive season. I feel like I really enjoyed that one. And then just maybe like a segment I really liked. I think you mentioned it earlier in the pre-show, Deanna, but learning about Jost Capito, however you pronounce his name. I thought that was super interesting because I had no idea who that guy was. So I enjoyed that episode, at least for that part. So, but yeah, overall, it happened, and it should bring some more fans into the show, into the sport.
Oh yeah,
I mean, so.
It's had social media a buzz with it, and the the other YouTubers other than us are all out putting in their historical things, and this is where the timeline doesn't make consistently. Like there's one where Max is winning in Austria, and the crowd shot is clearly from Zandvoort, and they point that out.
All right, well, so that's good discussion on Drive to Survive, but what we're really here for is the prediction. So let's go ahead and move into that. Just to kind of set it up for everybody listening, we're going to do a countdown from 20 to 1 for the drivers, so all the way from last place to the driver's champion. And then after that, we'll do the constructors 10 to 1. So same kind of deal, whoever finishes last for constructors all the way to the constructors champion. And then we'll wrap it up with some random predictions, kind of some of the same ones we've done in years past. Maybe a couple bets between hosts of the show, and some fun things like that. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. And I think we should start with the back markers, as I mentioned. And so the 20th placed driver, I'm going to let one of you guys start it off because I'm hoping you have the same guy and pronounce his name first, and then I can say it after you. And for that, I'm going to give it to Deanna. Who do you think finishes in 20th?
Guan Yu Zhou.
Guan Yu Zhou, exactly what I was going to say. Andy?
Not quite. I have Nicholas Latifi finishing in 20th.
Latifi in 20th. So how do you think that Zhou in his first year in F1 beats out Latifi, who's got, his third year now?
I think it may be one of those count back type things.
So not back-to-back years with points for our man Latifi, huh?
Someone has to end up like this. Just to preface this is I think one of the toughest predictions to do in order because somebody has to be at the back end of it. And I couldn't really think of anybody else to put other than the guy who kind of sort of blew the car up in Bahrain. So while Alex Albon was on the mic during the test, which I thought was hilarious and really bad timing.
Andy, do you want to look up who John had for 20th place? We have all his predictions here.
I believe he has Nicholas Latifi as well.
All right, so 2 Latifis and 2 Zhous. All right, so let's move up at the 19th place. This is where I have Latifi, so yeah, it might be a countback thing. Maybe one of them will score points, but I've got them pretty close to the battle for the basement there. Deanna, where are you at for 19th?
Latifi as well. Confidence in Williams has gone down pretty significantly over this past week.
Yeah, not a great testing for Williams, especially in the second half here. Andy, who do you got in 19th?
Guan Yu Zhou, or as they say on the broadcast, Zhao Guan Yu, because apparently they have the names backwards.
Yes.
So the family name goes first in Chinese culture. So
well,
they will probably say that a few times.
I will forget that by Wednesday's prediction episode. And then who do we got for John? He's got
Guan Yu Zhou as well.
All right, so moving up to 18th place now. Deanna, who you got there?
Mick Schumacher.
Ooh.
But I think that there will be
way
actual
different than I have him.
points in this.
You think what?
But he will be scoring points.
Just not a lot of them.
Just not a lot of them.
Andy, who you got for 18th?
This is probably my first really break with everybody else here. I actually have Yuki Sonoda.
Yuki down on 18th. Okay. John has Alex Albon. And I'm scared to admit I also have Alex Albon in 18th. I just feel like he's going to need a little bit of time to right the ship coming back to F1 after being off for a year. And it's a Williams, so like not a great combination of his worlds there. But I'm a little bit worried about the Mick one from you, Deanna, because I've got Mick
I know.
significantly
Well,
higher than that.
I went with my constructors first, and after about the top 4, it's just
Yeah.
anybody's game.
Yeah.
So this was just kind of a probably more recency bias than anything.
Yeah.
So hopefully he proves me wrong, but that's just right now.
Yeah, because clearly you have K-Mag ahead of him, and we'll get to where you've got him at and all that. But that was one of my first thoughts when K-Mag was announced. It's like if Magnussen can beat Mick after being out of the sport, that's not a good look for the young Schumacher there. So that's something I'm going to be paying attention to.
But he also, I almost don't even count his first year after competing against Mazepin in that god awful car. I think this is just, no matter what, this is going to be great for him just to have an experienced driver with him. And hopefully the package as a whole was better. Well, I don't think there's any way it could be worse. So hopefully there's progress. I don't love having him all the way down there, but it's very tight between basically here to at least my top 8.
Yes, it's a complete and utter crapshoot, at least on my predictions. I did 15 minutes before recording. Andy, who do you got for 17th?
I have Alex Albon in P17.
All right, Mr. Albon. John has, if I can find my mouse again, he's got Valtteri Bottas all the way down at 17th, which, again, I have Valtteri Bottas in 17th. So we're starting to sync up a little bit here with John. Deanna, who do you got there?
For 16th? Oh, no, wait, 17th. 17th, sorry. That's where I have Yuki Sonoda.
Got Yuki in 17th. All right, so moving on up to 16th now. That's where I have Mr. Lance Stroll. Kind of hoping it's his last, or at least his next step towards the door of F1, and we can move on from Mr. Stroll. I feel like Daddy Stroll will fire anybody that he thinks standing in their way, and at some point he's going to realize his kid's not doing him any favors, I think. Andy, who do you got in 16th?
I have Valtteri Bottas in 16th. And that is based purely on testing. They did not have 2 really great tests.
Yeah.
They struggled.
Really cool testing livery.
Yeah, no, I mean...
And merch.
And regular livery looks pretty damn good, too. But I do think it will struggle. At least
you're going to get a good look at that car because it's not going to be moving very fast, I think. Deanna, who do you got in 16th?
That is where I have Alex Albon.
Mr. Albon. Okay. So we've got pretty much all the same names in the bottom here, just in different orders, because John has Yuki Sonoda down in 16th place for him. All right, so moving up now to 15th place. For that, I'll give it to you, Andy, to lead us off.
I have Kevin Magnussen in 15th place.
All right, K-Mag makes his return to 15th. All right. Deanna, who do you got?
That is where I have Valtteri Bottas.
Bottas up in 15th. I'm going to go with mine because John's a bit of a shocker here. I've got Sebastian Vettel in 15th because
That's a bit of a shocker, I think, too.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be considering where it's coming from.
Fair enough. Should have known better.
Yeah.
It's amazing, James. You and John, I both have the same comment about your respective grids so far.
What's that?
That you're trying to trigger the other one.
I just don't believe in the Aston Martin driver lineup, and I'm not totally believing in the Aston Martin this year yet. I feel like 15th is going to be a good place for him, and then maybe he'll ride off into the sunset at the end of the year finally, because I've been predicting his retirement for like 4 straight years, but we don't have to talk about the previous years just yet. Eventually I'm going to be right. John here. Andy, I'm going to let you tell us who John's got in 15th spot.
John has Daniel Ricciardo in P15. Ow.
That's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, I just watched the episode where he won today, so it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Does anybody...
It's a prediction.
It is a thing that exists.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I get it. Obviously, not being in the Bahrain test is going to put him on the back foot. I do agree with that, but he did have regular testing at the shakedown test, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I get it that the 3 days from McLaren weren't the best, but they also weren't the worst. This was not 2015 Honda testing all over again, where they couldn't do a lap from here to there. It's a fixable problem.
Yeah, and I feel like they might not have it fixed for Bahrain, but after the first couple rounds, hopefully that brake issue gets fixed. Like it should, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if either McLaren driver finishes that far down. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Maybe he knows something we don't know. I don't know. So moving up to 14th place now. This is where I have Yuki Sonoda. He got an episode pretty much a nice little focus on him for Drive to Survive. And for me, usually when they focus on a driver on Drive to Survive, that's kind of where I decide like if I still like him, if I don't like him that much. But for some reason, Yuki's, I still feel the same. Like I don't know whether I'm a Yuki guy or not a Yuki guy. I just really on the fence with him. So
I can't tell with him from that episode. Like, is that just his weird brand of humor coming out, or is he really that strange?
Yeah,
maybe a combination of both.
He was definitely different.
Yeah,
and he is very little, which I find funny. But that's not purposely funny, I guess. So I don't know. Deanna, who do you got for 14th?
I have 14th. This is where I have Kevin Magnussen, which feels a little high, but I don't know. Maybe that has
just wait till you get to mine.
Oh God.
I guess it's not actually that bad. I had like 2 iterations of these rankings in 15 minutes, so got a little messy on my sheet. Andy, who do you got for 14th?
Mick Schumacher. Do you think he will outscore Kevin Magnussen? I do think Kevin Magnussen will help him a lot. But I think this is, if he is the talent that we all think he is, this is where it's got to show itself. So that's why I've got him up there.
Yeah, agreed there for sure. All right, so John in 14th. This one is just as surprising as the Ricciardo one, I think. He's got Pierre Gasly here in 14th. As a resident Gasly fan, Deanna, how does that make you feel?
I mean, I don't love it. I guess that car could be an absolute hot mess, but I feel like Gasly will pull out more results than 14th. Yeah. Like, just thinking of all the drivers kind of in that midfield, in that range, I just can't imagine him being that low. But, I mean, I tend to be biased in that direction, but it doesn't feel good. The Ricciardo one doesn't feel good. It gets very interesting in the middle here of Sean's predictions. He went in a different direction, so he might be right. We don't really know yet. So
I mean, to be fair, he won the predictions episode or the predictions like week by week contest on the show. So maybe he's more of a short-term predictor, not a long-term predictor. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe he's just onto something here. So let's move up to. But
I will say that's the best part about it is you can be off on your own island and not necessarily,
especially this year.
Yeah,
especially this year. Yeah. So 13th, we'll go to John, and for that, I'll go to you, Andy. Who does John have at 13th?
He's got Lando Norris in P13. Ooh. Ow again.
Yeah.
I don't see it, but.
Neither McLaren guy in the top 10. That doesn't bode well for McLaren in the constructor standing as far as John's concerned.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Not that that's not happened, but
heads would be rolling at McLaren if this was the case.
I was going to say, like, apparently Andrea Seidel's getting fired, and we're ripping up driver contracts left and right,
and teams getting sold probably at that rate. Like,
and it's Pato and now Colton Herta taking over next year.
Yeah.
Because if that's this result, that's what's happening.
They're going to go the Haas route and have 2 rookies. It worked out so good, so they're going to try that for themselves next year. All right, Andy, who do you have in 13th? I'm going to assume it's not Lando or Danny Rick.
It is not. Here's where I have Pierre Gasly. I do think he will pull out some results. I think he's in amongst a lot of crowd. There's just a lot of crowd in between here and where he probably ultimately, like, I think driver talent wise should be. I do think the car is a bit of a mess at this point. It looked relative, just after watching all the testing, it didn't look really hooked up yet.
All right. Deanna, who do you got there in 13th?
In 13th, I have Ocon. Yeah, it's tight in this range. Who knows? Yeah. And it's like a crazy race at that kind of upends kind of this range.
A shock Hungary just throws one of these completely out the window.
Yep.
True. For me in 13th, I've got Kevin Magnussen. I want to believe in the Haas that they're going to take a step this year with new regulations. They had a ton of wind tunnel time, so hopefully they put it to somewhat use because I've got both their guys here in the top 13. So, I hope so. But I don't have him as high as John, I guess, so that makes me feel a little bit better. In 12th place, I've got Mick Schumacher finishing just ahead of K-Mag. I think that's got to be his. I mean, any driver will tell you their first goal is to beat their teammate, but for Mick Schumacher, I think there is a lot of pressure on him to beat his teammate this year. Last year was basically a gimme, which was like a perfect opportunity for him. Zero pressure. There's no way you're going to lose your teammate. Just go out there and kind of figure out how an F1 season works and how, you work with these trainers and these coaches and like your eating regimen and all that. He's got a whole year to figure all that out. And now he's got to beat a guy coming off of a year break from F1, who's an accomplished driver and a hell of a driver, I think. So a Mick Schumacher, anywhere ahead of K-Mag on the grid, I think is a win for him. I've got him at 12. Maybe that's a little high, but we'll find out. Well, Deanna, who you got in 12?
I was just going to say, I do think the Haas car has made a step.
Yeah.
It definitely turned some heads with some of their testing times, but however, I do think those were very much low fuel glory runs on C5 tires. Mm-hmm. Also, after everybody else had gone home, which meant that when it's 95 degrees out and you get the cooling of the night, the track gets grippier and you go faster. So I am impressed that there's pace in the car. I mean, it's nice to say there's pace in a Haas car. Yeah. When's the last time we could say that? So, but I don't know how much of a world beater they really are at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like you hear about that in testing sometimes, like a smaller, lower budget team wants to go on those glory runs just to post a W. And if there's any team in the history of F1 that needed some like glory runs to get some good press, it's Haas. Yeah. So they needed those runs. And if that's what they were, I mean, good on them for that. So hopefully they do make that step. As an American podcast, it would be nice if the American team would.
We can actually claim it as an American team again for now.
Deanna, who you got for 12th?
In 12th, I have Lance Stroll.
Mr. Stroll.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's fair ranking for him, I guess. Andy, who do you got in 12th?
I concur with Deanna on this. I have Lance Stroll in P12.
Great choice, Andy.
All right. And then who does we have for John in 12th? Lance Stroll. All right. You guys are working together against me. That's fine. That's cool. All right. 11th place. Andy, what do you got?
I have Sebastian Vettel.
All right, Vettel in 11th. Deanna, who do you got?
That's where I have Gasly.
You got Gasly in 11th? A little lower than I would have thought for you. John?
It came off the constructors, and there's only so much I could do to make the rest make sense.
It gets tough. Where are they at? John for 11th. He's got Mick Schumacher all the way up in 11th, so just ahead of where I've got him. So we won't touch on that. For 11th, I've got this is where I've got Fernando Alonso. I think he's going to finish behind his teammate. I don't know. The Alpine was really maybe the hardest one for me to rank for the constructors. I don't know what I believe in with them. So 11th is kind of where Alonso ended up, honestly.
Yeah.
But for 10th place,
I'd agree with Alpine just in general. There's pace in that car, but it did not look like a very fun ride. It bounced all along the track, and
all the A teams, I don't know what to do with.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I think I'm most confident in my Alfa Romeo pick, but even them, it's like I could have just been an unlucky streak there. I don't know. Or at least, hopefully, maybe. I don't know. All right, so now we can move into our top 10. This is where I have Esteban Ocon. Like I said, I think he finishes just ahead of Alonso. I thought we saw some glimpses of what they believed in when talking about Ocon coming up as a young driver. Drive to Survive showed him get his first win, so maybe he's got some more of those up his sleeve. But for 10th, who do you have, Deanna?
In 10th, is where I have Sebastian Vettel.
Vettel in the top 10. I will bet you on that if you would like, but we can talk about that later. Andy, where you got for 10th?
I have Esteban Ocon here. I agree with you, James. I think this is where he slots in.
Ocon in 10th. Thank you, Andy. Vettel for John as well in 10th. So 2 Vettels, 2 Ocons there. He always did rate Vettel too high. Shame on John. For 9th place now, this is where I have Pierre Gasly. I just can't see him being outside the top 10 this season. I like him more and more every year, so I think he's going to have at least an okay year with maybe not that great of a car. Deanna, who do you got for 9th?
In 9th, this is where I have Fernando Alonso.
All right. Andy?
Concur with Deanna again on this one. I have Fernando Alonso in P9.
All right. And then John has Kevin Magnussen, K-Mag, making the return to Formula One and finishing in the top 10. So that would be considered one hell of a drive.
Yeah.
That would be one hell of a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that.
I'm getting the distinctive feel here that John is showing his North Carolinian.
I would too, but I have no sort of loyalty to them.
All right, so now we move into the top 8, where I think gets a little bit. Well, I don't want to say it gets easier to pick yet, but now we're getting.
I feel like the 3 of us are going to be similar, and then John.
Yeah,
I have one twist. I have one big twist in this. I think
big twist.
Big twist.
All right, let's get into it here. So 8th place. Let's start with Andy. Who do you got for 8th place?
Well, he's not in wherever John has him, but I do have him here, Daniel Ricciardo.
All right, Danny Rick in 8th. For Andy. Deanna, who do you got?
I concur. Danny Rick in 8th.
All right, Danny boy. John's got Esteban Ocon in 8th place. This is where I actually have George Russell. So I'm like, I do this myself every year where I don't truly buy into what Mercedes is saying, but I kind of sort of buy into it just a little bit because I think they're sandbagging, but I also think they got it wrong. I don't think their like side pod list thing is I don't think it's right.
They're easily the worst with porpoising.
Yes, I was going to say, yes. I mean, yeah, exactly. Based on that, I'm kind of with you. Like, I do kind of believe a little bit of what they're saying. They've got to get on top of that. Yeah. Like, Lewis Hamilton's going to be in concussion protocol by the end of the season if they can't get that down.
Yeah.
It was rough.
But if I have faith in one team to develop their way out of it, it'd be Mercedes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I fell with my Mercedes stuff. It's like I think they're going to start off bad, and I think if one of the 2 drivers is going to turn around and make something of the season, it's not going to be George Russell. Maybe for some obvious reasons, because if I had to pick one of those 2 drivers, I'd pick the established one. But yeah, I just don't think that's the right philosophy. So I think they're going to have some struggles with that. I have heard that they've already got some new floor that they were just waiting on testing from the FIA, and maybe that'll be on the bottom of the car by next weekend. But I think they're sandbagging, but I don't think they're sandbagging as much as they normally would. I think there might be some concerns coming out of that team. So George Russell in 8th seems pretty good for me. I think he'll get a couple podiums. Maybe they'll find the right track for them or something, but 8th place. I said John was Ocon, so let's move up to 7th place now. This is where I have Danny Rick in 7th place for McLaren. Deanna, who do you got here?
This is where I have Lando Norris.
All right. Norris just ahead of Danny Rick for you.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, who do you got here?
This is where I have George Russell, based a lot kind of on that test and seeing what a rough ride that car is. I don't know that this is not the Mercedes that he came into when he was subbing before. This one's going to be a bit of a project, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get on top of it as quickly as Lewis is.
Yeah, and I think he's going from a situation where there was 0 expectations, and now he's going to a team with maybe the biggest expectations, and like that's going to take some getting used to. Especially even if this car isn't as good as a Mercedes typically is, the team's expectation is to win the championship. That's what they've done for a million years in a row. So we're going to see how he handles that pressure, especially if that car is not as good as what they've had lately. So for 7th place, John has Sergio Checo Perez. So I'm a little bit surprised by this one too, because I think Red Bull looks really strong. And I love Checo Perez, so I think I'd be pretty shocked if he finished down in 7th place. I don't know where you guys have Checo, which you don't have to say right now, but I think 7 seems a little bit low for him.
I mean, especially kind of at the end of testing, that RedBull did look strong, but we shall see. It's only the beginning.
This is true. And that, I mean, that's the most exciting part I think about.
The only thing that I would say is it's still the second seed at a Red Bull. And now it's really amplified. Yeah. And that's still a lot to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 6th place. Deanna, we'll start off with you here. Who do you got in 6th?
Okay, so there's going to be a little bit of a pattern to my top 6. Mostly this is my pipe dream, hoping they all 3 fight together. And then it's still similar to what I had in my video from months ago. But anyway, in 6th, I have Russell.
Okay. George Russell. Andy, who do you got here in 6th?
I kind of gave you my reason for it just a minute ago. This is where I have Sergio Perez. I think it's because it's the second Red Bull seat, and it does not allow you to be an individual achiever. I don't think it's a product of his talent. I think it's a product of where he is.
So you think the Red Bull is strong?
Based on what I saw on Saturday, I think Adrian Newey and Helmut Marko were smirking really, really hard at that test, trying not to smile too much. And when you show your card that much, I think that says something.
Yep. All right, so John's got, where we have 6th, he's got Fernando Alonso all the way up in 6th place, which I think would be
that would be El
really
Plan.
Good stuff for El Plan. Yeah. That would probably mean some podiums, I would guess, for Alonso. Or just like for crazy consistent season, which I mean could be possible for him. For me, this is where I have Lando Norris in 6th place. So I got the 6-7 finish for McLaren. Lando just ahead of Danny Rick. So like not really challenging Ferrari like they did last year, unfortunately, Andy. That was a lot of fun last year, though. I just don't think it's going to happen again. For 5th place, this is where I have Sergio Checo Perez. I think he's going to finish a little ways behind Max for a lot of the same reasons we've kind of already talked about. So 5th for Andy. Who do you got?
Here's where I have Lando Norris. Maybe I'm betting with my heart and not necessarily my head, but based on the talent level and based on, I actually do think the McLaren has come out with a decent car. Might not have worked well in the second test, but I do think it's a good car. And so I think Lando will push it forward.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see him up there at all. Deanna, who do you got there in 5th?
So in 6th, I have what I think is the second Mercedes driver, and so in 5th is going to go the second Red Bull driver of Perez.
Okay. And then, Andy, why don't you tell us who John's got in 5th place? Because I think this might be maybe the biggest shock on his list.
John has Max Verstappen in P5.
Oof.
I feel like that's personal.
That feels pretty personal. I think that's a good way to put it. That would be quite the shock. I mean, he would have to be
based on some DNFs.
Anticipating. Based on what?
Based on some DNFs. Would be my
yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I don't know how else that would happen. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's got to be the most confident he's ever been in his life, which is saying something. He's probably been confident just about his whole life to be as successful as he is, and then to be in a car that looks really fucking good. I mean, we'll see.
Okay.
We won't know until we know.
Yeah, exactly.
4th place. This one starts to get a little fun for me. Andy, who do you got in 4th place?
I have Charles Leclerc in P4.
You bastard. Okay. No faith, that's fine. Deanna, who you got there in 4th?
I'm going with, and I don't like this, but I kind of committed to this decision a few months ago, who I think is going to be the second Ferrari driver, but I love him dearly, and I don't like saying that. But anyway, Carlos Sainz in 4th.
Carlos Sainz in 4th?
But I don't know. But I can see him easily beating out Leclerc, but we're just
going about easily.
Or not, okay, like I could easily see that as a situation that could happen. Not easily beat him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it did happen last year. So.
Yeah. So it's not out of the norm. But I just feel like if it comes down to it, at the moment, I feel like Ferrari would still choose Leclerc over Sainz or prioritize Leclerc over Sainz. over like a full season. I don't know. I mean, if Sainz comes out the gate swinging, that'll all go to hell. But we'll see.
That's why it'll annoy me because they keep saying that any day now they're going to announce this Sainz extension. It's like I wish we could know for sure what each of their contracts said in it, like term and exact money, because I'd be so interested to know like what the actual differential in pay there is, because I think it's super close. And if he starts off on fire, then that could be real interesting.
Yeah.
So John, he's got my boy Leclerc in fourth place as well. For me, in fourth place, I've actually got Lewis Hamilton finishing in fourth place, which I don't know. When was the last time you think he finished that low on the table, Andy?
2013 would be
13?
When he was that low. I think he was fifth or sixth.
Sounds like he's due. I think, like I've said already when we talked about George Russell, I just don't think Mercedes has it right. I know, their army of fans was all excited because it looked different, so they thought that they must have found something. Maybe they took a shot, and sometimes you miss. And the
fact that it wasn't on the car at the first test means that it probably was still under development. It obviously, they have to sort that porpoising problem because it is just such a rough. I mean, that was the thing I noticed right on the first day when I saw it. I'm like, well, it's quick, but it's going to fall apart. Something's going to break if you put that into a race distance. There's just no way.
Yeah, and I think they're going to struggle, and I think he's going to drag a piece of shit car way higher up than it should be. So at least I've got that much respect for Lewis Hamilton as a race car driver. I just don't think he's going to finish in the podium positions. Speaking of which, we are now in the podium positions. Top three for each of us now. So we'll start off with John. In third place, he's got George Russell. So his first year at Mercedes, having pretty damn good finish there for the season. Andy, who do you got for third place?
Here's the beginning of my twist. Lewis Hamilton in P3.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
Based on the car. Based on
the
car. I do think, as you mentioned earlier, I think Lewis will probably drag that car up higher than probably where it belongs. I do think Mercedes will also develop that car, but I don't know if the hole that they're going to dig, what looks like that they're going to dig for themselves early, can be fixed with a hard charging Lewis late. It just may be too much of a mountain to climb points wise.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It could mean that Mercedes has a lot more wind tunnel time between the end of this season and the start of the next season than some of these other teams.
This could be a one year wonder, but it makes sense. I mean, they took. I mean, it went to the last race of the season and beyond. When did they really, in earnest, as a complete team, start focusing on this car? I don't know when that happened.
Yep. Deanna, who do you got in third place?
So I went through all the second drivers, and now we're going through the number one drivers, and I also have Lewis Hamilton in third. Again, mostly because of the car.
Yep. All right. For me, in third place, I've got Carlos Sainz in his second season at Ferrari. I'll get to the Ferrari stuff in a minute, but I'll just leave my comments on him. I'll lump them together. All right, so we're in the final two now, so I'm going to ask you who your number one is, since if you say your number two, we're going to figure out who your number one is. So why don't you tell me who your number one is, and then we'll discuss our second place drivers after that. So, Andy, who is your 2022 World Drivers' Champion?
Max Verstappen reigning and defending.
All right, Max, 2 in a row, says Andy. Now I go to Deanna. Who do you have as your World Drivers' Champion?
I don't love this pick anymore, but I committed to it months ago, and I'm sticking with it for some unknown reason. And I would have felt so confident about this until Saturday morning. Red Bull had to do what Red Bull does, but I'm still going to stick with Leclerc. It's about time for Ferrari. It's about time. It's been a lot of years since they've been on top of the table here. And for a team that has been so successful historically, turn it around. I also love when there's a new champion or just kind of somebody new on top, even if it's in a Ferrari. So we're going with Charles Leclerc.
Ferrari super fan.
No. But like I do. That's just kind of I think my hope is that it's somebody new. I think in all reality, Verstappen's kind of odds-on favorite by far right now.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the. I'll probably have to check on like Tuesday what the opening lines are for drivers. I don't know if they've updated it since testing, but it's got to be Verstappen. Although the odds on Lewis, I wonder what those are right now because those might be a little juicy. But that's a
you may actually be able to get a value bet on Lewis Hamilton for drivers champion now.
Weird. So John, I don't think there's any surprise here. He's got his boy Lewis Hamilton as the winning his 8th drivers championship this year. So I'm penciling him in for Lewis. It also shouldn't be a surprise that I completely agree with Deanna here. I think this might be the year. Go ahead, Deanna.
No. Go ahead. Odds on favorite is Lewis Hamilton at plus 135. Max Verstappen at plus 180. Charles Leclerc in third, tied with George Russell, plus 800. Carlos Sainz, plus 1,400.
Oh, that's a value bet right there.
Yep.
What's Leclerc at?
800.
Oh, you said that.
And then you have Norris at 2,200. And then
that
it
makes
goes up
sense.
from there.
So Sainz was 13 or 1,400?
14. That's definitely the best value, I think, of the bunch.
That's, yeah. That deserves a little taste there. We'll have to break open the Outlet F1 piggy bank. We tell you all your deposit, all your donations go towards the show, but really they go towards our gambling decisions.
I feel like we should read that disclaimer. You know, if you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling hotline.
Yes.
But yeah, so for me, my World Drivers Champion this year, I think this is the year I got Charles Leclerc winning it. I've been just drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't think is a strong enough term for what I've been doing.
He's been drinking it out of them side pods. That's what he's been doing.
I've been bathing in it, just taking laps in the side pods. Everything looked awesome. I mean, today I saw a rumor. I don't know if it's like I said, I've been following some really crazy Ferrari news Twitter, so I think a lot of it's really fake. But I did see a couple different people talk about that they're hearing that Ferrari used one power unit for all 6 days of testing. So that sounds pretty cool. That they had Haas and Alfa Romeo running on some higher modes too to test those out. The reliability looks there. They had the most laps run of any team. I think they're the most in the first 3 days and like the third most in the third 3 days. No real issues. Both guys look good in the car. They had some porpoising, I think, in the first 3 days, but then
got a lot better.
It didn't really seem to be much of an issue.
A lot more stable the second test.
And it's getting hard now because like all we keep hearing about is porpoising. So now when you just see a guy like on a bouncy,
and Bahrain is also
is that porpoising or is it bumpy?
Well, and Bahrain is very much more bumpy too. I mean, it's an older tarmac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you know that has
so it's like kind of hard to distinguish
all sorts of weather to it. Like it goes from 60 degrees at night to 105 in the sun. It's gonna heave and jolt around. So,
yeah, and I think just as the thing that's going to get him over the hump is that the driver pairing is just so good. Sainz and Leclerc. I mean, and either one of these guys honestly could finish first in my eyes. Like I think they're both that good. I think they're both good enough in that car. I just prefer Leclerc just slightly. But if you told me that Sainz was going to win this season, then I'd be ecstatic about that too. So I think this is the year. I think Max Verstappen is going to finish in second place. I think it's going to be a back and forth pretty much all year between Verstappen and Leclerc. I just don't think Perez is going to be able to take on Sainz. So I think that's kind of where it's going to fall out there for the constructors. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So for second place, D, I think that means you got Verstappen there too as well, right? Mm-hmm. Then Andy,
I have Carlos Sainz.
You got Sainz there, yep.
And I do think that Ferrari has made the biggest leap of all the teams, just based on how I've seen them run. I agree with pretty much everything you said. They had really no issues. They could run pretty much however they wanted to run, whenever they wanted to run it. I do think that Sainz being in a championship battle will be a little bit different. I don't know how close this drivers' championship is necessarily going to be because this is the first time Sainz will be in that fight. But I'm interested to see what he's going to do. And I think if there's a driver who can make the next step, he's the closest one, I think, of all of everybody else that can make that next step into a championship fight.
Yeah. And John's with you there, at least. He's got Sainz finishing in second as well, which, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, it would have surprised me if Lecaros won and Sainz was 2. I'd be cool with that. You probably wouldn't hear me complain once. I would probably just add a shrine for Mattia Binotto like that.
No. Then you have to grow the hair the same way that he does.
That's not a problem, Andy. You've seen my hair.
I know.
Well,
that's why
I've got pictures.
You're the only one of all of us that could do it.
Yeah, I just need those goofy round glasses.
There you go.
I could pull off Binotto pretty easily. I think he's a little bit taller than me too. But
just one quick question on him. Did it annoy anybody that he refused to speak English on Netflix on DTS?
No, it's fine. There were just like moments where I've never seen Mattia have a personality, but he was just like pushing like Gunther around and like doing weird things, and I was like, "You are human,
not just a computer."
Yeah.
I said last episode I am currently a Mattia Binotto fan, and I'm a believer in him. I'm turning over a new leaf, and Drive to Survive didn't do anything to prevent that from continuing. So I'm still squarely in his corner until he does something to screw it all up, and then I'm pretty fickle, so I'll turn on him pretty quickly. I know that about myself. But so that's our drivers lineup. So I think we'll take a quick break here. That's all right with everybody, and then we'll come back and we'll do our constructors 1 through 10, but we'll go 10 through 1. So coming back for that. Welcome back to Season 4, Episode 5 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. This is our 2022 F1 season predictions episode, and we had some Drive to Survive chatter earlier on. Just to remind you real quick, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Make sure you check out the link tree in our Twitter profile page, and also check out the link in the show description where you can become part of the Outlap F1 Nation. $1, $5, $10, whatever you can afford per month would really help us out. May even allow Deanna to start paying her heat bill, and she won't need the blanket all the time. But until then, she can only hope for springtime to give her some relief there.
It's coming. I swear
bitter.
it's coming.
In bitter
Eventually. The snow is not helping anything.
Maybe this is the last little...
Very sad.
Last little snow.
I think this is it. I'm hoping this is it. It looks like it's 60 after today.
Totally. Now that we know baseball is coming back, here comes summer. All right, so here we're talking about, we already went through our drivers' predictions 20 through 1. A keen listener might kind of have an idea of where we're going to go with our constructors now based on where we put our drivers. But sometimes we're stupid. We put the constructor nowhere near where the drivers actually landed. Sometimes we hedge our bets. Sometimes we're just not paying attention. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go from 10 all the way down to 1. I will go first with my 10th place constructor. And for that, I'm going to go with Alfa Romeo. This one is actually pretty tough. I think you guys will disagree with me on this, but I actually think Alfa Romeo is going to finish in last, but I think they're going to get at least a couple points. So I don't think there's going to be any goose egg teams this year. They didn't have a very good testing. They've got a rookie driver in Zhou, and then they've got Bottas, who had never really been a big believer in. Maybe being the leader of the team and having a car built more to fit his style of driving may benefit him, but I'm just not seeing it from Alfa Romeo so far. So I got them in 10th place. Deanna, who do you got bringing up the rear for the constructors?
Again, 5th to 10th, it's kind of all up in the air. Anything could happen. But I'm just going to go with testing and the general consensus, and that's Williams in 10th, unfortunately.
Williams in 10th. Andy?
Yeah, I will concur with Deanna on this one. I will say Williams in 10th place. I think they went for a very bold design on the car. I mean, you can almost look at them in the Mercedes, and they have probably the least amount of side pods. I just don't know that necessarily works. And again, I think it's the inexperience of the two drivers that they're going to have. I mean, Alex Albon has some experience, but he's coming back in. That's a tough ask to do. And Nicholas Latifi, I think he's okay. I just don't think he's all that great. He'd probably do like really great in IndyCar and just, be right up there with all those guys. But I don't see him as an elite F1 guy. So 10th place, Williams.
All right. And then John agrees with you guys. He's got Williams in 10th. A little bit surprised to see he didn't put McLaren in 10th after what he did to the drivers. But
it's coming.
Yeah, they're not too far up there. Moving up to 9th place, Deanna, who do you got there?
This is where I have Alfa Romeo. again, kind of for similar reasons as you said, James. The first test was a disaster. It did look better last time, but they have a rookie. They have Bottas, who will be fantastic at qualifying. I'm hopeful this year, kind of being in the midfield, his race craft will improve, and we'll see a lot more overtaking from him that we didn't see very much of at Mercedes. But yeah, and that's just about where I can put them at the moment. But they could be a lot higher than this, but we'll see.
All right, Andy, what do you got for ninth place?
Yeah, I have Alfa Romeo. I mean, I do agree that there could be one freak result in any race this season could throw this completely, to shreds. But just based on kind of where I see them in the order right now, that's kind of where I have them. I mean, I agree with Deanna. I said the first test, not good at all.
Yeah.
Barely doing any running. Second test was better, but it's the vertical learning curve. I think they're on the back foot of that just because they are not a works team themselves. And I don't know how in with Ferrari they are, unlike their other customer team.
All right, John's with you guys again. He's got Alfa Romeo in ninth place. For me, I've got Williams in ninth place, so we're all kind of on board with the back markers, just in a different position, at least as far as I'm concerned with the other three of you. So let's move up. Maybe we'll get some more variety here. For eighth place, Andy, who do you got there?
I have Haas F1 finishing in eighth. I think they will score points. I think they will score multiple points. I think they will probably be the feel-good story of the year. I sure hope so. Redemption curve, Netflix, get ready for it. Gunther should be all there for you. But I know they made a step. I just don't know how high. And I think eighth is probably where I see them slotting in.
Yep, two likable drivers. I can definitely see them being a feel-good story. I have them feeling a little bit better than you, though. John's got Alpha Tauri coming up in eighth place, which I think would be a little bit of a disappointment, I'd say, for them. For me, in eighth place, I've got Aston Martin. I had both their drivers not in great positions. I think I had them 15th and 16th. Vettel had a Stroll. I think their car, the livery, the colors look really cool, but I don't know if I believe in their whole philosophy with their side pods. Seemed a bit weird, but they took a shot, and I guess it could still work out technically, but I don't think that's the way to go. And I just don't believe in either one of their drivers. So eighth place, Aston Martin. Deanna, who do you got there in eighth?
In eighth, that is where I also have Haas, which I think eighth after last season and the season before would be a great result for them.
All right, so apparently you two are in a bit of cahoots here. So we'll see where you finally split off in these predictions. In seventh place, start off with John. John's got McLaren in seventh place, Andy. At this point, shouldn't be a shock. We saw where he put the drivers at, but man, that would be a kick in the stomach.
There would have to be something fundamentally wrong with both the car and both drivers, I think, at the same time to have that happen.
I feel like they have to have some sort of double DNF where they crashed into each other in a film or something. Things would have to go unless they're not finishing races, which I don't think. I'm hopeful that they're going to get this brake thing fixed in time for the first race. It looked like they'd already made a step on Saturday. It just wasn't enough. They were able to do some longer running, but I'm in terms of am I panicked or freaked out or am I concerned or annoyed? I'm annoyed. I'm really more by that problem than anything else as a fan. Yeah, I think it's more likely that Zach Brown leads his beer hockey league in goals this season than it would be for McLaren to finish in seventh. My man's got one on Drive to Survive. I don't know if that was set up. I mean, Putin gets 12 goals a game when he plays, so I don't. Maybe Zach rules with an iron fist too. I don't know, but
yes, let Zach score on this one.
Netflix just handed out hundreds. Come on. For seventh place for me, this is where I have Haas, and I had quite a bit of trouble with Haas. Haas and their drivers were probably who I changed most in my rush to write down these predictions because, you get tempted by what they did, like you were talking about earlier, Andy, with those glory runs, and you want to believe. But I kind of got over that, and I put them where I think they belong. In 7th place, I think would be an excellent finish for them. So, Deanna, who do you have in 7th?
I'm like looking at this and I don't love it, but I have AlphaTauri. I don't know, just nothing like noteworthy from this test. Nothing amazing, nothing horrendous. So they're just slotting in here for the moment. It could be much higher than that though.
Yep. Andy, you following suit or are you splitting off here?
No, I agree with Deanna on this one. I mean, it is these, I think 7 through 5 is so hard to rank, and I do think it's going to come down to individual results. And I'm just looking at kind of where I think the cars are at this point, and I think AlphaTauri was probably the one that struggled the most of the 5, 6, and 7, so I'm going to put them there. They can develop themselves out of it. I mean, they do have access to Adrian Newey. They are a Red Bull sister team. This could all be proven very, very moot by the end of the year, but that's where I got them now.
Very good. Let's see. Next up, we have 6th place. This is where I have AlphaTauri. I think they'll have a fine year, middle of the pack, solid, scoring a lot of points, especially Pierre Gasly. So 6th place, I felt pretty good about them there. Deanna, who do you have for 6th place?
In 6th place, this is the one that I keep switching back and forth. But I'm going to go with Aston Martin.
Okay.
Just because the one I have above of them, I have more faith in their driver pairing.
Andy, who do you got there in 6th?
This is where I have Alpine, and the reason I have them below, actually, Aston Martin is simply a product of the turnover at the top of that organization, that you're asking a lot of an engineering crew when you've got new structure all the way around. You went with no team principals last year, and now you have a standard team principal this year. You've got, I do think Otmar will do a great job, but he's not been on the job enough to really influence this year yet.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. I just, if you told me I got to pick one driver pairing, Alonso and Ocon or Vettel and Stroll, I mean, I wouldn't even have to think about it. Because I think you have two, champions between Vettel and Alonso, and you got two young guys, and it's like I'd go Ocon over Stroll every day of the week and wouldn't even think twice about it. So interesting that you put Aston ahead of them, but, to each his own. John, on the other hand, in 6th place, or I shouldn't really say on the other hand because he's there with you, Deanna. He's got Aston Martin there in 6th place. All right, so moving up to 5th now. Who do you got, Deanna?
That's where I have Alpine. I think this is one of the teams that could potentially struggle with reliability because I know that they said when they were developing this new power unit, reliability was not their number one concern when they were doing that. And they did catch fire in the middle of, I think, the Barcelona test. But, I mean, after that, they didn't really have any problems in Bahrain. But I don't know. Again, between Aston Martin and Alpine, I have more faith in that driver pairing.
With you there. Andy, who do you got in 5th?
Here's where I have Aston Martin. At some point, the Lawrence Stroll money has to get spent wisely. I do think they have been, taking talent away from these other teams slowly, quietly. It's been building towards something like this. The question is, can these two drivers actually deliver that? Maybe, maybe not. I think that's a fair critique, James, when you mentioned, who would I pick on drivers? I'm just looking at it based on the teams and the structure. Got Aston Martin in front of Alpine at this point.
Okay. For John, if you've been wondering where he's got Haas ranked, it's right here. 5th place for Haas. I mean,
that would equal their existence best.
Yeah.
After throwing up a fat goose egg last year. That'd be dramatic.
And changing drivers like a day before.
Yeah.
Season.
Okay.
I mean, it is there. Simone Rest is a thing. It's entirely possible. Nothing about any of these are implausible.
Yeah.
Other than like Red Bull finishing last.
All right, for me, 5th place, I've got Alpine here. Pretty much all the reasons that Deanna already went through. That seems like a good spot for them. For 4th place now, Andy, we'll start off with you here. Who do you got 4th?
I want to say Mercedes are vulnerable here, but I can't quite bring myself to do it. So I've got my boys in Papaya here, 4th place McLaren. And that is kind of based on the problems in this last test. If they came out like gangbusters like they did in the first one, I'd probably have them one spot higher. Can't do it yet. Got to show me first. I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think it's P4 for MCL.
So, Andy, question. If the season starts in a few days here, and the McLaren looks to be what you thought it was coming out of testing, that they had a lot of work to do, if that's the case, is 4th a win for you, per se, for the season? Or would you be disappointed from where you came from last year and just kind of staying in 4th place?
If the car is proving to be much more of a struggle, 4th is a win, without a doubt. It means that they got on top of it and were able to still put up consistent results. If they're, where I didn't think that they would ever be up in like P2, P1 range. I thought like maybe I was looking like, okay, was there somebody in the top 3 that was vulnerable enough that maybe they could slot back in? It clearly isn't going to be Ferrari. I think Ferrari is a little bit too far away from them at this point. Mercedes are vulnerable. Is that vulnerability real, and can it be sustained throughout the year? That's the question. Because if McLaren get the car right, Mercedes are maybe a little more vulnerable at the beginning. That's these first 5 races. That's their McLaren's opportunity to get in on the P3 battle. I just don't know that they've got enough of it at this point.
Okay. John has Alpine in 4th, so the highest for the Alpine votes, which I guess, that if things break right for Alpine and everything, I wouldn't be shocked to see Alpine in 4th. So it feels weird saying that, but I guess that wouldn't be that big of a shock. For me in 4th place, this is where I do have Mercedes. A lot of things I've talked about earlier where I think they're sandbagging, but not as much as they may have in the past or they want people to think. Because they're laying it on pretty thick as they always do. George Russell came right on board and started with the same whinging that, we're not that good. We're not going to be fighting for wins. So maybe this year it's a little closer to true. I think it will be Mercedes in 4th place on my board here. Deanna, who do you got in 4th?
In 4th, I have McLaren. On the same page with Andy there. Yep.
All right, so now we'll move on to John as we get into these podium spots. John has Red Bull finishing in 3rd place. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna write that down and give you guys a chance to say something about it. I'm not sure.
Again,
unless the powertrains have some sort of a bug, or they race themselves into the wall or something like that, which is possible. I don't see it based on car performance, at least at this point. But it could. That's why we race. I mean, you don't take it from testing. You take it from the product of the race. So I mean, they could fumble over themselves. If Checo gets and I want to start to win, and I'm ticked off that Max is getting all the love and I don't get any of the love, and doesn't play the team game like he did last year, you could see some faltering, maybe. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, I could convince myself into ways that Red Bull wouldn't finish in the top 2, but I feel like I'm stretching on just about all of them because I think Sergio Perez is going to fight for some race wins, and I think he'd be happy with that. Considering where he's been most of his career, to be in a race-winning car, I think he'll be good with that. I think in order for them to not finish in that top 2, Max Verstappen would have to take such a drastic step backwards in terms of just maturity and racecraft, and it's he's been building and getting better every year. I just don't see him. I just don't see it. Maybe he can't maintain, championship level every year. That's fine, but to take that big of a step back, that'd be pretty tough. Something crazy would have to happen. But we'll see. For me in 3rd place, this is where I have McLaren. So I'm with you on a lot of the issues that I think they may have. But I think that they'll get the jump on Mercedes because I think Mercedes is going to have problems too. And I think McLaren can build up a little bit of lead early on. I think that might be just as exciting of a back and forth as we saw this last year with McLaren and Ferrari. I hope it is because I thought that was a great battle to watch throughout the season. But I think Lewis is going to drag Mercedes real close to McLaren, but not quite over the hump. So I think George Russell's going to struggle a little bit, even longer than Lewis will. So D, who do you got standing in 3rd place on your constructors podium here?
In 3rd place, I have Mercedes. That just seems clear choice. Yeah, and I think they're not going to start in the best spot.
Yeah.
But that could definitely change quickly here.
Yeah. They will have a lot of races to turn around, that's for sure. Andy, who do you got in third?
Yeah, here's where I have Mercedes. Of the top three, the most vulnerable right now. Does that make it all the way to the end of the year? I don't know. And I just think I don't know that there's going to be a chasm of points. I think they will charge late. I just don't know that it's going to be enough to get them back up there.
All right, so let's say our first place for the Constructors Champion first. We'll go John first. Should not be a surprise to anybody. He does have Mercedes as the Constructors Champions for the
ninth time in a row.
Year in a row.
9 times.
So it's hard to say that's a bad pick because, for like a third of Deanna's life, Mercedes has won championships. And they're probably going to continue to do that. But whether they do what they should, I don't see it, but John does. So good for him. He's sticking to his team, and I appreciate that. Speaking of sticking with your team, I do have Ferrari winning the Constructors' Championship. Obviously, I had them 2 of the top 3 spots for the drivers for all the same reasons I've already said. I hope it's a season to remember. My hype is at stupid levels. We're talking like 2016 Chicago Cubs team levels of hype right now. It's getting pretty dangerous. I've been hurt before, so hopefully I come out of the season fairly unscathed. Deanna, who do you got in first place?
This is mostly my just dream of wanting somebody new. Well, not new, but we have not had in the drivers or the constructors. It has not been a Mercedes or Red Bull driver since 2009. And I guess you could kind of include Braun and Mercedes if you wanted to. So then kind of go back to 08. And it's been a very long time. And if anybody is in a position to do so and upset those two, it's Ferrari. So we're going to roll with it. We're going to see what happens. I do think that Red Bull looks a much better package, and I would also have a little bit more faith to Red Bull developing that part of the season. But we're gonna hold out hope. We're gonna hold out hope.
I think Sainz's ceiling is higher than Checo Perez's, so I think in that situation, I think that could be the differential there. And again, not to take anything away from Checo Perez, I love Checo Perez, but Sainz I think is really on the up and up there. So Andy, who do you got? First place, Constructors Champion, 2022.
I do think it's going to be a heck of a fight, but I am going to stay with Red Bull simply because I don't think Ferrari has, believe it or not, this is where I'm going to say Ferrari is not experienced in a championship fight in a long time. It's one thing to come into that arena. It's another thing to do it and do it well. We've seen Red Bull try to get into that arena year after year after year and not quite do it. I think Ferrari will be strong. I think they will be tough. They will be fast all the entire year long. I just don't know that they're going to get it over the line this season.
So old James, and by I mean old James, like a week ago, James would have totally agreed with you because he would have been super worried about Binotto just fucking this all up. But I'm a new man now, and I believe in Matteo Binotto, and I think he's going to have all the right calls and pull all the right levers in that closely contested Constructor Championship. And like Deanna, you're probably going to eat your words. If this ends up happening next year on the F1 for Beginners episode, I'm going to be pretty unbearable when I get to talk about Ferrari again and all my most evers. All those numbers are just going to grow.
Yeah, I'm regretting some decisions already, but
I'll make sure you regret it all year long.
We're rolling with it.
So then obviously me and Deanna both have Red Bull finishing in second. Andy and John both have Ferrari finishing in second. So some differences there in the constructors, a couple surprises, but we're syncing up on quite a few things, I think. One thing I think we all agree on is that it's going to be, or at least shaping up to be, quite the season. And I think now we can move into some more kind of like random predictions, some things we talked about in seasons past, and get into
and
some
I do
of those.
think one thing that didn't necessarily get talked about with respect to the tests, when I've seen cars follow each other, that seems to be able to happen. So it looks like this package is set up for better racing. And if that's the case, boy, is this going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some nice scenes. And you can go on YouTube and like F1 themselves were tweeting a lot or tweeting them out and YouTubing them out, whatever. Some of that racing, some of that racecraft on track, and it looked really good. Super promising for what we're about to enter into in just a few days here. All right, so for random predictions, first one up here, we've got how many drivers get podiums that aren't Red Bull or Mercedes drivers. So not how many podiums feature non-Red Bull, Mercedes, I guess. So how many of the 16 drivers that aren't Red Bull or Mercedes, how many of them get podiums? John says 4. Andy, what say you?
We'll go 7. I think that P3 spot is going to be a bit of a revolving door.
Mm-hmm. Deanna,
Especially early.
Where you at on this one, Deanna?
So last year we had 13 drivers with podiums. I think it's going to be easier, if I had to guess, to get a podium this year because the cars all seem closer together and bunched together. And I think that's going to be possible. So I'm going to stick with 13 and say 9 that are outside of Red Bull and Mercedes.
Yeah, you're kind of more in line with what I'm thinking here. So I'll split the difference between Andy and Deanna. I'm going to go with 8, but I'm hoping for more.
Oh, I'm obviously hoping for more.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes.
And it wouldn't surprise me to see more too, for sure. All right, so the pole champion, or whatever they call the DHL pole, or no, DHL's fastest lap. What's the pole?
Yeah. It's the tire trophy. It's the Pirelli.
Yeah, the tire trophy.
No more Speed King.
No more Speed King.
No more Speed King.
We're back to poles.
Long live the Speed King. So most poles for any driver. Are we saying the number 2? Or I guess not, because John didn't say a number for his. But which driver will have the most pole positions, which I guess we'll consider for the sprint races just the Friday pole position, right?
Correct.
And we talked about. So Deanna, who's it going to be?
Oh, God. We'll go with Verstappen.
Okay. Max. For me, this is an easy one. I think Charles Leclerc is really good at getting pole positions, and you give him a really good car, and he should be even better at it. So Charles Leclerc, and I don't think it's going to be that close. Andy?
Oh, boy. This is actually a tough one because I do think Leclerc and Verstappen both have some awesome qualifying form to them. Based on where I have my driver's predictions, what the heck, I'll go out and I'll just say Carlos Sainz. Puts it on pole multiple times this year.
Okay. And then John's got George Russell, actually, for leading in poles, which would be...
Interesting.
Yeah. That would be a hell of a feather in his cap racing against Lewis Hamilton every
I'll
race.
say this.
He beat him in qualifying in Spa.
Yeah, he
True.
did.
In a Williams.
True. Yep. So what do we got now? Team with the most DNFs and how many? So team, most DNFs. Andy, who you got?
DNFs. I'm going to say, doesn't mean no fun to do it, but I'm going to say like Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, how many?
Double DNFs or just one? Or
I think just
add them all
one.
up.
Just any DNF, yeah.
I'll go with John on this one. I'll say 5.
5. All right. John's got Red Bull with a note of mostly Max incidents. So that drips of personal all over it.
Yeah.
And he says 5 for Red Bull, thanks to Max, which would kind of fall in line, but I think they would even need more than that to finish where he's talking about. But
for context, last year Williams was the most with 11 total.
Yep. How many this year, Deanna, do you think, and who's it going to be?
I guess after looking at that, I'm also going to go with Alfa Romeo, kind of in the back there, kind of vulnerable on a first lap, some reliability issues already, and I'm going to go with, let's just say 10 total.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. So I'll go with, I don't want to have the same. I'll say 11 again then. I'll go 11 for Alfa Romeo.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Zhou is just going to have some bad races. Bottas probably spin a time or two. And then I'm sure they'll find some gremlins at some point and have some issues out there. They have a really strong power unit, though, because I think that Ferrari's going to be good. All right, next up we have driver with the most fastest laps. So this is the DHL award, I believe. John has Charles Leclerc. And I have to think about whether I agree with him or not. Andy, who do you got?
I will say Max Verstappen. Leading from the front.
Max. And then D.
I'm going to go a little bit different here, and I'm going to go with George Russell, saying that he kind of picks up those fastest lap points for Mercedes, something like that.
I will go with, I'm going to go with Carlos Sainz, because I think there's going to be some times where they have him pit to get that extra point when Leclerc is leading the race, and Sainz is, not going to catch Verstappen or something like that. So I'll go with Sainz there. All right, next up, we've got how many drivers/teams will score 0 points? So for me, I'm saying 0 teams score 0 points. I think every team will at least have a point. I think drivers that don't score, definitely Zhou, I don't think is going to score. I think that's it. So 1 driver and no teams. Deanna, who do you got for no points scored?
I'm going to go a little bold and hope that everything's all super close and go 0 drivers and 0 teams.
Well, that'd be cool. Andy?
Yeah, I do think every team will score this year at some point. So I'm going to say 0 teams. I guess I'll say 2 drivers. We'll probably end up near the bottom there.
All right, so 2 drivers, 0 team. John has 3 drivers and 1 team. Who did he have in last? So he had the Williams, so he had Latifi and Albon. All right, so moving up to the next one, we've got how many races will we get? Andy, this is a special question just for you.
I think last year I said 2, and I think we had that.
We had too many.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Just given where global warming is, it just seems we get more extreme weather. So I will say 3.
3 what ones? John says 2. Deanna?
Guess I'll go 4.
I'm going to go 1 then. I'll take the little guy there. And like I kind of said already, I'm not going to be rooting for rut races anymore after some of the stuff that happened last year.
Traumatizing.
Yeah. I'll take some wet qualifying.
I was going to say I've never watched so intently 4 hours of nothing in my life.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Will there be a mid-season swap of drivers?
Yeah, preseason swap.
Yeah, does that count? Is our base one? John
Big testing swap.
John said 0 unless there's some sort of medical related swap. Which I guess actually, do we consider that a swap if somebody misses just 1 race?
Unless it was broken leg and they were out for the season.
No, I mean, I would have to say that this would be a driver losing his normal
COVID
seat.
Yeah, losing the seat, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can see reserve drivers.
Yeah. I'm gonna say no. Then I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't think. I think most of these drivers are on long-term contracts. I don't think they want to rip them up.
Yeah.
The cost cap.
There's
Even
no
though
one
the driver salaries isn't part of that, but still.
Yeah.
I would say the only option would be a Gasly and Perez, but I don't ever see that happening this season.
Yeah.
So gotta go with no.
At least not this year.
No.
All right. So I think unless one of you guys has a secret question, that's it for those. So now we can move into some of our host bets here. Last year, to recap, I beat John because I had Leclerc and he decided to take Vettel, which I didn't have to convince him to do that. He did that on his own accord. So I won that one, and I continue to enjoy that bottle of bourbon to this day. So now we wanted to mix things up a little bit. Now it'll be me versus Andy. I offered up Leclerc versus Lando Norris, and Andy has zero faith in his boys, so he wanted odds, which is not something I'm going to play here. So I think Andy, we decided for a Leclerc Sainz bet. Is that correct? Whoever finishes further
I will
up?
roll with car 55. I will roll with Carlos Sainz. I think my predictions agree with that. So I'll ride with that.
I think this would be a rum versus bourbon battle.
Tequila.
Tequila. Oh, I thought you were a rum guy.
I still owe you a bottle, Andy. Don't let me forget
Patron.
that.
Patron Silver.
All right. Okay.
Patron. All right, tequila versus bourbon. So that'd be a good matchup there. And then Deanna, I think you and John have a Max versus Lewis bet.
Yes.
Which I'm assuming you're going to take Max there.
Absolutely.
And John seems to be pretty confident about his Lewis Hamilton pick here. So,
well, apparently Max is going to finish 5th and retire a million times and just return to like 2016 form, according to him.
I think you're sitting pretty in this one. Good news is John pays up pretty promptly and has the booze ready for you. So I guess that's a good thing. So I've been enjoying mine. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So do we need to program the Super Max song to play every time we talk about this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. We got something for the soundboard. I like it.
Yeah.
Just add stuff. Add more to your editing.
I will become a full-blown Max fan just to annoy him throughout the entire season. Anytime Max finishes ahead of Lewis, I will play Super Max and have a grand old time.
I just look forward
text
to
it in the group thread every time he crosses the line.
I just look forward to watching him try and decide what side he's going to go with when, like, Leclerc and Verstappen have some sort of on-track incident or something. Any kind of controversy between those two, I'm really interested to see which way he goes with it.
Yeah.
I feel like he might go Leclerc's way because he's not happy with
I think, yes, after the end of last year, he was very much anti-Max, if I had to guess. Not anti, but like,
yeah.
Gonna choose the other driver in those situations.
Yeah. I think more than anything, he's anti Christian Horner. So I haven't heard his review of Drive to Survive.
Oh God, it's not gonna be good.
I don't know if he's going to make it through the whole season. Honestly.
Yeah, if you didn't, you're not going to get away from. I don't think Christian Horner is not in any episode. He's in all of them.
Everyone.
Yeah, they are
multiple times.
And it's like teams that like are not even related to anything he has to do with. Like he's just making comments about all these people. Why?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to be in everything?
Yeah, I think it was like we got a lot of Gunther Steiner the first 3 years, and that there's still a good amount of Steiner in this one.
Yeah,
but Horner, I think, definitely leads the way on screen time for sure.
And, so part of the problem is because Max doesn't do interviews like for Netflix, which is fine. I fully understand why he doesn't, but they had it instead with Horner, plus just kind of his normal team principal inclusion. So it's just so much of him, and he lives for that kind of thing.
Yeah. They could have spent some more time with Checo, and that makes me think about how they didn't really talk about him in Mexico at all.
So there was so much stuff that they could have put in there.
No, I mean, like they could have done 5 more episodes if you actually really wanted to tell the story of this.
I guess I'm maybe a little bit surprised that, like, with all the success they've had with it, that they don't have like more teams being covered at each Grand Prix, because some of it's just luck. Like, you just might be following the wrong 2 teams or whatever it is at that specific Grand Prix, and like they just don't have as good a story as some other team that weekend. But
me also wonder
it shouldn't. Like, I don't know if there's a way to figure out to not make them, like, maybe not an extra film crew, but not dedicated to one specific team. Like, I feel like let them follow the storylines that are kind of happening and not just try to get everybody in there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or just, like, interview anybody after any session.
Or just give us, like 2 separate ones.
Yeah.
Like, one is, like, the normal, like, flashy Drive to Survive for new people, and then the other one's just, like, all, like, behind the scenes, like, nerdy shit that you gotta be, like, deep into it to really understand what's going on, but then you get some like nuggets that you normally wouldn't, a little more access for.
But I do think we're getting to the point where even with new fans, I feel like it's going to start to get a little samey.
Yeah.
It's the same formula. Like, you got to either mix it up a little bit or tell the story better
chronologically.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
You're asking a lot
Oh,
now.
I know what I wanted to add, James, because you're a resident Ferrari person. Do they have as part of their end?
Not for long.
Yes.
Do they have mode push?
I knew that was coming.
What'd you say?
Is that real?
What?
Do they
I didn't
have
hear the
mode
question.
push?
Push,
Because
push.
Yeah, they
push
say
in
that.
their engine maps? Okay.
Push.
Mode push. Yeah, that's a very normal thing that I think they say. I think. That sounds.
I think I may have finally caved.
I'm just questioning everything after listening to all these radio messages today. I was trying to figure out if they were in the right race or not because they've done so many weird things in the past. And then they were doing all those radio messages during the qualifying laps, and I was like, what? And then they were making the first 3 corners of a race seem like it was 20 laps long. I was so confused.
Well, somebody put on Twitter an actual timer of the 10-second penalty that Lewis had.
Oh yeah, that was 45 seconds
45.
That's the longest 10 seconds ever.
Oh man,
just slightly dramatized.
Good stuff. It's good stuff. Go watch it if you just want to have fun. Go watch it. I mean,
It's
seriously.
the same thing. Sometimes I want some cheap, big budget. I shouldn't say cheap and easy, big budget, blow shit up movie. I just don't want to think. I just want to eat my popcorn, drink my drink, and just be entertained. And that's
it's a
what X5 is.
Great turn your brain off show. I don't recommend watching it and recording yourself and trying to make comments on top of it. That makes the whole experience horrible.
Yeah.
I will have to say. I think I will get much more enjoyment out of it when I don't do this whole video. And I'm not ever doing this again. This is the last one. I can tell you that.
I feel like you said that last year, but
I know. People kept saying things, and I haven't really posted a video in a while, so I was like, okay, I'll do it. But I'm regretting it. I'm really regretting it a lot.
Easily caved.
Well, look out for that on the Relapse channel. Deanna's big regret.
I'm really selling it a lot.
Because we are apt to promote each other here on this show.
All right, this show is starting to go off the rails.
I was going to say, we're going off the rails.
I'm going to reel us back in.
Yeah.
I should check it again. We've got to be under 4 days now till practice starts. Let's see.
Wasn't it 4 days and 9 hours an hour ago?
Oh, you know what?
Yeah,
that's because I keep forgetting I have to add the 7 hours of this. So we're at 4 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, and 40 seconds.
Yep.
From FP1, which is what were you saying, a little bit later than we're used to, Andy?
Yeah, it'll be
for
I
FP1.
think 7 Central, 8 Eastern. So the free
Friday,
practices
right?
in general, because of the new format, are going to be later in the day. So,
well, I'll be off on Friday, but it is the day after St. Patty's Day, which is, I'm not Irish, but I grew up on the south side of Chicago, so I like to treat that holiday as if it's one of the bigger ones. So I might be watching that on record, a little hungover, but I can't wait.
We will have our first official preview to come out. We will get everybody ready and pumped for the Bahrain International Circuit, as if you haven't seen it enough. But we will get us ready and primed for the weekend. We're going to do something a little bit different with the previews this year. It's going to be me and James, our dynamic duo, because John and Deanna have some life events that have things going on. So we want to give them some flexibility there. So we're going to do James and I in the previews, and then we'll all come together as much as we can for the race reviews this year. So for Deanna, for James, it's always super fun to do. Look forward to this season. And as always, may all your laps be fast.